Guys, we're recording this live and have an incredible level of support in stream right now. People coming in and sharing Prime with us, sharing bits with us. Thank you for all of the support. Can't call it out too much during the recordings here. And we are about to watch Asmongold react to a larryzaur video. For anybody that doesn't know who larryzaur is, he's one of the comedy creators for Final Fantasy XIV. In recent history, he's kind of pulled back a little as he's started having a family and another career, and so has not been able to put out the level of coverage that he was before, but is still beloved in many of our hearts. So if you have not discovered Larry, I encourage you to go watch larryzaur's videos. And we're about to watch Asmongold, who has had a insane welcoming to Final Fantasy XIV this weekend, with 150,000 plus people watching him at any given time. I saw him break 220, and so it has been absolutely wild to watch Asmongold come into the game and have just the level of interest in his progress. I think he's really shown people how A, respectful he can be, and B, how just raw entertaining he can be. Why it's not just luck that he's as big as he is. He really is good at his job, and whether or not he's your taste, like, he's incredibly good at his job. So thank you guys, Verdija for 20 gifted subs, and Oni for 10 gifted subs, Crusado with 100 bits. Let's get started.
Okay, is this it? Yes. Okay. All right, let's watch it.
In Final Fantasy XIV, you've got a bunch of jobs to choose from, and I've already made a video talking about that. Problem is, now everything is completely different. So here I am again with all of the Shadowbringers jobs to help you pick what you want to play. You've got your tanks, including one new guy. They're the ones fearlessly charging headfirst into danger's way. And luckily, Shadowbringers made that even more straightforward. Simply turn your tank stance on, and you are now tanking. Turn it off, and you aren't. Wow.
That's
Speaking
easy.
of danger, these are the healers.
Okay.
Always be nice to them. You don't want to know what happens when they get angry. Oh, thank you. No, that's not what I meant.
Was that a life grip?
Shadowbringers gave the healers a super special power.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen that same ability type thing happens in WoW, and people can use it well. There's definitely this like rescue type ability that, when used well, can be incredible. But I think rescue and Shirk, Tank's ability to dump aggro on another target, gets used quite a bit for trolling.
Big heal mode. The melee DPS are here to cry about mechanics that keep them away from the boss.
That's true.
In Shadowbringers,
That's
they
very
gave
true.
the melee 2 free, I don't need positional anymore buttons. But they still complain. And these are the casters. They go big shooty boom boom magic. What did they get in Shadowbringers? More big shooty booms. The ranged can run around without any loss of DPS. And they've got a new friend who everybody loves. Except the other ranged. Anyway, let's go look at the jobs. Dark Knight. It uses a big ass sword. Play this job.
This is what Asmon wants to play. Obviously, he had to start as a warrior because he can't get access to Dark Knight until he's further into the game.
If you want to use a big ass sword. It's got a special stance you got to keep up, obviously called the dark side. You keep this up by using Edge of Shadow and Flood of Shadow, of course. And
that's badass.
You can even reach inside your soul and take out your inner darkness, and he can fight along with you.
That's so badass,
mode
dude.
Delirium, where you can spam heavy-hitting attacks like Blood Spiller or Quietus, which otherwise would cost Blood Gauge. Yeah, it's got a blood gauge. For mitigation, it has the Blackest Night, which is a shield you put on yourself and lets you use a blood gauge ability for free if it breaks. And its invincibility is called Living Dead, which you activate it first, and then you have to die. Once you die, then you're Walking Dead, and you're actually kind of not dead. But somebody has to heal you up to full, otherwise you really do die. Gunbreaker. These guys were the personal guards of Queen Gunhilda herself.
How the fuck does that work?
I don't know.
Okay, it's like purgatory. Oh, I see. I see.
You
Okay.
also were like, I really like DPS. It's got a...
Larry knows the game so well to be able to simplify it down to such simple meme statements. It's absolutely incredible how well he does that. Living Dead is a great way to troll some healers.
3-part combo, but it actually has a separate 3-part combo inside of another 3-part combo.
Okay, yeah, we're not playing this. This is complicated.
It has a powder gauge with cartridges in it. The regular
fuck
combo
this, dude.
will earn you cartridges.
It's way too much.
You can spend the cartridges in order to do the special 1, 2, 3 combo. So it's very clicky. It's a very clicky fun.
It's so many buttons. It's so many buttons. It literally just feels like they were like, hey, remember those quests where we have you type a phrase in and we remind everybody that plays on console that that's what they get for playing with controller? What if we had a job where that was really hard too?
Job. Its invincibility is called Superbolide. Basically, you shoot yourself and now you can't get hurt anymore because if I hurt myself, the enemies can't hurt me.
True.
Paladin. It's got a sword and a shield. To be a
Okay.
paladin is to be protection itself. Paladin is really good at party utility and helping your friends not die. It's got a...
Do you think we could get McConnell to play Paladin? I mean, the game literally has Paladins in it. And
There's a 0% chance McConnell joins him in this game.
it seems like that's basically the way that Paladins are supposed to work, right? I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, this is exactly what he's going for. I'll be your Paladin, bro. Yeah, there it is.
Physical damage phase and a magical damage phase. During
No
your
way.
physical phase, you've got a damage buff, and then you've got a dot combo, and then a regular combo that will unlock a heavy-hitting attack called Royal Authority. And this you
Okay.
can use 3 times in a row. Then you go into your magical phase, where you can attack at ranged with heavy-hitting magic attacks, and a big AoE attack again, Confiteor. You've got the
That's
wings
badass.
to protect your entire party. You can also heal
What the
yourself or
fuck?
heal a target, and its invincibility is Hollowed Ground, which just makes you straight up invincible. You can't get hurt. Warrior,
Wow.
it smashes. It's got an axe, and it smashes with the axe. Warrior
Oh.
doesn't care about mitigating damage. They're just all about hit me anyway. I can
Best
take it,
job
just
in the
hit me.
game.
It's got 2 combos. One that applies a damage buff, and one that builds its wrath gauge more. It's
That
got a
seems
special
really
mode,
good.
Inner Release, that allows it to spam the
Yeah.
heavy-hitting attacks like Fell Cleave or Decimate. Both the single target
Okay.
and AoE attacks can be enhanced when you first use Infuriate to augment them. Warrior is all about building up the gauge so you can use it on attacks to just smash more. It's got a fun mitigation
So it's like
called
Rage.
Vengeance,
It's
where you
literally
get
like
hit,
Rage.
but then you just slap them
Yeah.
right back. Or it can increase its HP even more because above 100k health isn't enough. Its invincibility is called Home Game, where you tether to an enemy and now your HP can't go below 1. Samurai.
What the
they
fuck?
wield a katana
That's
and
badass.
offer 0 party utility besides their big damage. Samurai's core rotation works around 3 separate combos. Each time you finish a combo, you earn a sticker, or otherwise known as a sen. You spend
the
these
fuck?
sen on powerful iaijutsu moves, and the move changes depending on how many stickers you had when you use it. If you use it with 1,
The
you
samurai
get a dot.
one's pretty
With
cool.
2, you get an AoE attack in front of you.
I mean, it's just raw damage, right? Like, that's Samurai and Black Mage are just raw damage.
Yeah, the
And with
samurai
3,
one's
you get a
badass.
heavy-hitting single target attack. It also has another resource called Kenki.
I
that
like
you
this
build
a
up and
lot.
You use on heavy-hitting attacks. You notice a lot of these are heavy-hitting attacks. It's because all of Samurai's attacks do it. Shadowbringers gave Samurai even more big attacks, like
Holy
Shoha,
fuck.
an attack you can only use when you gather up 3 meditate sticks.
Like, as somebody playing 14 for a long time, the fact that, like, all of these abilities are glowing is just insane to me. As a warrior main, like, there's only, like, 1 or 2 things glowing at a given time. But Samurai is just like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Do all the things. Anything you want to do, just do all the things. Like, do anything you want to do. There's...
Decks. It also has 2 separate AoE combos and overall flows very well from one combo to the next, building up your resources and spending them. Monk.
That's
These guys
badass.
are all about throwing away the weapons,
Oh.
and instead your body
Okay.
is the weapon. Monk has 2 combos.
Yeah, this one's
Sounds
dumb.
straightforward.
Yeah,
It
this is
but
dumb.
each one
The
of those
samurai
has
was
a
cool, but this
positional
one-
requirement.
Nah.
Every single one. All the other melees.
He didn't
only have
even
a
need to
handful
see
of
the
positions.
rotation.
Monk takes that and says, "I want all of them." Shadowbringers also gave Monk
Yeah.
a 4th Grease Lightning stack, which makes them attack even faster and harder than before.
Yeah,
it
the
builds
thing
up a
is-
resource called
He didn't like it even before he talked about it. He said, the next one is Monk. This one's dumb. I already know this one is stupid.
Chakra that it can
Why
use
would you punch something if you could literally use a weapon? It just doesn't make any sense to me, man.
on a
Monks are
single
dumb.
target attack or a ranged attack, and other buffs that mostly work around its 2 separate combos. It does really high damage, but still offers some party utility with a physical damage buff to the party. Dragoon. It uses a spear. They kill dragons, and the reason why they're so sharp is because even if a dragon eats them, they can still kill the dragon on the way out. Dragoon also has 2 combos, but instead these are longer combos. Most of the other physical jobs in the game are 3-part combos. Dragoon is 5.
So, when he described Gunbreaker as having combos on combos on combos, Asmon was like, I'm not doing that, that's too complicated. With Dragoon, he said, So I'm going to use the word dragon followed by combos. I'm listening. I'm listening. You mentioned dragons. I am willing to hear out combos on combos on combos because you mentioned dragons, and dragons make everything better.
It's a very static rotation that you're going to do one combo and then the other combo, and you're always going to stick to that. But it has a whole lot of off-global cooldowns that you're going to use in between them to keep it interesting. It centers around keeping up a buff called Blood of the Dragon. However, when you collect 2 Eyes of the Dragon and you activate Ger Skogul, you unlock Life of the Dragon, where you glow red instead, and you unlock even more powerful heavy-hitting attacks, including Stardiver. It's got a bunch of different jump attacks that range from jumping to the opponent.
Yeah, this is really cool, man.
I thought he was going to jump off. I don't think you can jump off.
I don't
think you can jump off right there, but that's what I picture Dragoon's doing. Is amazing, amazing damage, and then leaping off the platform and dying.
Like the armor, I think that's the best thing. The armor's cool.
Party utility like a crit buff to everybody, and it can tether to a friend and give their pal extra damage buff.
That's actually really cool.
Do you know Naruto?
Ninja?
Well, me either. Ninja's got a really cool mechanic called ninjutsu. You have 3 ninjutsu abilities, which, depending on the order you push them in, will change the attack that it performs. You have things like an attack speed buff, or an AoE on the ground that looks like dirt. Shadowbringers added a cool effect where you can augment some of the ninjutsu abilities. If you use Kasatsu before activating them, it'll change your fire breath into a huge fire tornado, or it'll change your ice breath into water shurikens like Greninja.
Did you see his eyes? Go back.
You can augment some of the ninjutsu abilities. If you use Kasatsu before activating them, it'll change your fire breath into a huge fire tornado, or it'll change your ice breath into water shurikens like Greninja. You also can tap into your
that is really cool.
Hokage arts and activate
that's
Boost,
badass.
which will be a
That's actually
shadow
really
of
cool.
yourself, and it will mimic every attack that you do.
Okay.
It's also got a really good party buff called Trick Attack, which will make the target take extra damage from the entire party. Ninja has a lot of interesting mechanics
That's really cool.
to its toolkit that goes beyond just simple combos.
So they actually have, like, party utility.
An extra brain cell to remembering what ninjutsu does what.
Yeah, this is
Machinist
complicated.
what you would get if you combined a cowboy with a Gundam with a Terminator. This is the range with the highest damage and the one with the least amount of RNG in the rotation. And I don't really have to say any more about it because you can summon a freaking mech. And while you're doing all of your attacks, you're overheating. You go into your overheat gauge.
So this was added with Shadowbringers. Like, Machinist looked, cosmetically at least, as a non-Machinist. Machinist looked fine before. And then with Shadowbringers, with the job action trailer, which is where they reveal the new rotations to us in a big cosmetic thing like what Larry's doing here, when it got to the Machinist one, we were like, yeah, more Machinist. Like, don't overheat. Like, there's a heat gauge or whatever, and they're doing their thing. And then the robot dropped, and we were all like, what?
Spamming your cool abilities that give you your cooldown.
Bro, this is like this comes out of like a 2000s anime, man. This is awesome. Yeah, I like this a lot. That's badass.
Like a freaking man, and your mech is over there punching shit. Oh, and you have a flamethrower. Need I say more, really? I mean, for AoE, you got some other cool stuff like overheat will now actually be a crossbow instead. You got a drill that you shoot out like a Giga Drill Breaker, and you have a special button that makes it guarantee it crits.
Yeah,
that is
really cool.
Is now superheated mode always. This job.
Bard has some of the best weapon glams in the game, but when I think about like what a hunter felt like to me in Burning Crusade, not cosmetically what was actually going on screen, but how awesome I felt, Machinist cosmetically now is much closer to how I felt when I was maining a hunter and raiding. It just, you feel like you're impacting everything because hunter was such massive damage back then.
Is all about balancing your battery gauge and your heat gauges to use all of your cool special boom explodey powers.
You have 2 gauges.
This is the job with the bow and arrow. Every MMO has one. This is ours. But not only can you shoot arrows, you can also sing songs and help your party members do things.
What?
And its rotation is in the middle ground of a static rotation with an RNG rotation. It cycles through 3 different song modes, and each song has a different effect on your rotation. Mostly you're keeping your dots up and spamming burst shot for procs on refulgent arrow. You've also got a new gauge called the soul gauge.
That's how hunters used to work in WoW.
Yeah, Bard works a lot closer to how hunters used to work. Machinist is how I felt. Machinist is how I felt. Bard is a lot closer to like, yeah, it sounds really complicated. Basically, you're just gonna do the thing. Oh, okay then. Like you're like, wow, hunters look so amazing, and there's a pet, and they're doing all this damage, and they're marking things, and then there's 2 different kinds of hunters. So what is it? Oh, well, some people literally have just a macro that they're just pushing over and over and over.
Arrow, and it does more damage the higher the gauge is. For utility, you've got stuff
Phobia,
like a
thank
heal
you for
buff,
5
or
gifted
damage
subs. I
buff,
appreciate
or
that. Thank
remove
you.
a bad thing on somebody, and of course a party damage reduction. Dancer.
This one
is
seems-
the new guy. It uses chakrams that it
What
throws
the
around
fuck?
and kills its enemies with belly dancing. It has the
What?
lowest personal DPS, but it can super buff its dance partner.
Okay, this job's rotation is really fun. Like, legitimately fun.
Lowest personal DPS, but can super buff. So this is the equivalent of an enhancement shaman, right? So like, there's obviously a partner that it plays with. It's a support class. Yeah, this is an enhancement shaman in Burning Crusade. They effectively give you
Yeah,
wind
you
fury
have to have
totem.
one.
Is that right?
Has 2 separate dances. And
It's a
when you
cut
activate
class?
one, you go through
Yeah.
steps like a Simon Says game. Standard step will be an AoE attack and activate a damage boost for you and your dance partner. Technical step will be a longer step dance, but this will be a damage.
What I like about this job versus most is most jobs have a core rotation that's on repeat. And so I bind mine to like the same 3 keys. And so I'm just pushing those 3 keys over and over on so many. And when I have been like messing around with Dancer, it's felt more like there's like a skill priority to things. And so it's a lot more of like, I want to work as high up my priority as possible. And so I'm always evaluating what's available and then priority down. And so there's actually like in my head, I'm watching my abilities. And that's so different. As a warrior main, like last Tuesday and the Tuesday before, I was literally running Delibram, which is one of like the more recent raids in the game, and you have to spam it over and over for your relic weapon. And I was literally spamming Delibram with max spell effects on the game, so the game just looks ridiculous. Nobody actually plays like that, I hope. And then I was playing no HUD. And like I can play my job with no HUD, and it's fine. Even when I was the main tank, it's fine. Like, what I like about Dancer is that I don't think I could do that. Like, you can't play Dancer with no HUD. And to have a DPS rotation that, like, I actually have to pay attention to what's going on, as a warrior main, I think that's pretty freaking cool.
But for the whole party, its rotation is very RNG dependent. It has a 2-part combo, and each of those can proc another attack. And then each of those attacks can now proc fan attacks. And then the fan
Jesus
attacks
Christ.
can proc a final fan attack. So there's a lot of layers of RNG to the rotation. It also has a separate gauge that you use on a big hitting attack called Saber Dance. And for movement, it has 3 separate dashes that it can use.
Wait,
Black
what?
Mage. It uses a magic stick and explosions and a whole lot more explosions. This is the magic version of the selfish DPS.
So this is the job I came into Final Fantasy to play. I played Black Mage because our group already had plenty of healers and tanks, and I had both healed and done range DPS in WoW. And I came over from Boomkin, and I kind of thought of that like astral, umbral, lunar, solar, moonfire, you know, like sunfire, like spam and all that. So like I had come over from Boomkin at the time feeling like really pendulumy, like you're doing this to do this, you're doing this to do this. And Black Mage felt like, okay, so I'm going to do fire to do all my damage, and then I'm going to do ice to build my mana back up. And I'm just going to keep recovering burn my mana on fire, you get my mana back on ice. And so it felt very back and forth. Where I always struggled with it is that Black Mage, especially back then in ARR, had like a complete lack of mobility compared to Boomkin, which, like, you know, your laser chicken over in WoW has incredible mobility. You know, the ability to turn into a cat and sprint, the ability to have instant casts on the move. It felt like it had a lot more mobility. And not only does Black Mage have big, long cast times, they literally have a circle they're going to put down on the ground, and the objective is to stay in that circle, and it inevitably feels like the boss sees that circle and then just targets it with something where you have to bail.
class, and specializes in longer cast times that deal super high damage with the trade-off that you're trying to minimize your overall movement. Black Mage's rotation goes through an ice phase where it regenerates mana, and a fire phase where it spends all of its mana on the really heavy-hitting attacks.
That's cool.
Shadowbringers added a finisher to the fire phase called Despair. Black Mage has a continuous...
I actually think this is like, it's cool, but like, I don't think that the Mage shit is as cool as like the melee stuff, dude. 65k, that does seem like a big...
Shocking. The warrior main here says that the mage stuff isn't as cool. Shocking.
number, man. It definitely does.
Buff you want to keep up called Enochian, which
I could
allows
play
you
this.
to use the heavier hitting spells.
Yeah, I could try
and
this.
if you have it up long enough, it unlocks a special void-looking attack called Xenoglossy. There's now also
That did
a way
almost
to keep your
100,000
ice phase up
damage.
during downtime.
Jesus.
Summoner. It uses a book, but it's not trying to be
Okay.
smart with it.
This is what
it's
Rich
mostly
plays.
picture books. Summoner is our pet DPS.
Rich has really been liking his, like, 100,000 button opener as he unlocks more and more of it. Rich has really been enjoying this. Of course, I mean, he to be an entertainer, he leans into, like, the fact that he's, like, mid-pull eating eggs as part of his rotation. But I think underneath, he actually really likes it. And the slide, he gets really, really excited about slide casting. Really excited about slide casting.
Job. There's
Okay.
Ifrit for single target, Garuda for AoE, and Titan for Summoner's rotation works on a 2-minute cycle of various phases that you go through. There's Dreadworm Trance, where you invoke Bahamut's Aether, and you unleash it in a big Death Flare attack. After this, you're able to summon Bahamut
Why would they
and
bring
command him to do big Akmorn attacks. And
What?
after him,
How
you
do
can
they get
summon
him to go over
Phoenix
there?
to do special fire moves and
That's
heal the
Moltres.
party while it's out. Also,
Holy
2 of
shit.
your spells become super Phoenix fire moves instead.
This is probably the job that I think is most likely to get a big change next expansion. Just for anybody watching this that's like, oh, I've always been interested in Summoner. I should do this. This is the job based on rumors, based on past comments that people believe is most likely to get one of the bigger sets of changes.
Oh
There
my
is also
God.
one of 2 jobs that can raise dead party members, though you either have to hard cast it or save your swift cast for it. Red Mage. It uses a sword with a focus
Okay.
So slide casting real quick as we get into Red Mage, which works very different. Slide casting for anybody that ever played WoW back in the day when they had terrible latency, you used to be able to have an add-on, I don't know if people still use it, that had like I could put a little red highlight section on the end of my cast bar that would tell me when I was probably good to go, and I could move without clipping the spell because the latency on the server, and so I could start moving and the spell would still go off. But it was really just a reflection of my latency and the way global cooldowns work with tab target MMOs. In 14, the last half second of your cast, you can always move like that. And so there's this ability to kind of greed when you're healing or when you're on Black Mage, where like I go to cast something and you kind of like slide into the last little bit. So as a healer, I feel like I move, like I'm standing in a group of people and I cast an AoE heal, and then there's a bomb going off and I begin to move out of that bomb in the last half second. And the ability to greed that last half second, paired with the fact that when our AoEs go off on our bosses, the animation happens after the tick. So it puts down a marker that says where it is. It hits the moment the cast is complete. So if the cast is filling, the moment it completes, it's going to hit scan. For any of you FPS players out there, it's going to hit scan, and everybody that gets clipped. But the animation might be like a big explosion with like smoke coming up and like lava rippling out. You can go stand in that. Like there's no linger to it. And so people move out, and they're at the edge of melee range, which, like, melee range, the hitboxes are enormous. And so they're sliding out in that last half second, and you see the axe go off and actually land a hit from, like, 10 feet away from the boss, slide out of the AoE, and then run back into the animation. They were never hit by anything, and they minimized, like, that lack of uptime. And that's just something that comes with practice. And if you mess it up, you end up clipping the cast, so you don't actually get the cast. You still get hit, and now you're slow to move back in. And so, like, as you learn, you get worse before you get better. But now we're going into Red Mage, where every other cast is instant, so it doesn't matter.
attached to it. This is the job that combines black magic and white magic together in order to do magic casting while also doing physical damage as well. Red Mage is special because every other spell that it casts is instant with the dual cast trait. So you will hard cast the shorter spells and then instant cast the longer ones. You'll do this while alternating building your white and black mana.
So it's literally like Fire Mage in WoW, where you were going to you're hard casting fireballs to get a proc to fast cast a pyroblast. Yeah, okay, that's wait, it's not? It's clear casting? Like there's no proc. I know there's no proc, but like I understand the gameplay.
It is clear casting. Yes, it is clear casting. So like people, I don't know how much the people in chat are specifically experts on like WoW terminology versus 14, because it's possible there's people that are heavily experts on one and not the other, but it is clear casting. So what it does is effectively, so what it does is every time you cast, you get a buff called dual cast, and it makes the next cast free and instant. And then basically, just to big picture sum it up and piss off red mages everywhere that I'm oversimplifying it, is you have basically two types of spells: short cast spells and long cast spells. Obviously, the amount of damage they do, the potency they do, is scaled based on how long they take to cast and all that. So you have this instant cast. I don't know if it makes it mana free, but it's definitely instant. So I don't know that it's mana free, but it's definitely instant. So and so you cast a short spell, you pick up dual cast, and then you burn the dual cast on a long hitting spell. And so that's the core of the rotation. And then you have this gauge that you're monitoring, and you have white mana and black mana. And so as you cast a spell, based on if that mana is associated with white or black, there's some that are associated with both, it moves that gauge up, and you're kind of ratcheting both up. And so you're determining what to use your dual cast on based on that, because you want those both to fill. My understanding is you want that gauge to be full on both white and black at the same time, because then you're going to move into a very different portion of the rotation once you finish that up. Now, when people watch me play Red Mage, I'm usually in like just super chill content, and I'm chatting with chat. And so there's times that they meme on me for like using Jolt, which is nice and fast cast, and then burning my dual cast on Jolt. So just Jolt, maximum 5 head, terrible rotation.
Like the nuance to it, yes, obviously it's different. But like the gameplay is relatively the same.
Once you have enough, you can go in for the melee combo, finishing it off with either a Ver Holy or Ver Flare big attack, and then another final big attack.
And the fact that he got distracted there, so he ended up missing it. So what's happening here is as you fill the gauge...
The nuance to it, yes, obviously it's different. But like the gameplay is relatively the same.
Once you have enough, you can go in for the...
The part I think you would have been excited about is now your caster's doing melee. Like your caster is using, they have a sword. They're going like all Zorro. And so you'll notice the gauge burns down. And so you burn the gauge on this melee rotation, which a lot of people bind to like command 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4. And so like that's really cool. I don't actually know of a WoW spec that does that. It doesn't mean there's not one, because like as much as I play WoW casually still, and I used to play WoW a lot, when you talk about the number of classes in WoW and then you multiply that by the number of specs each, it's a lot more ways to play than 14, and there are whole specs that don't really get used very much compared to other specs in certain types of content.
It off with either a Ver Holy or Ver Flare big attack, and then another final big attack called Scorch. Shadowbringers also added an AoE rotation.
That's kind of cool.
Thunder and Ver Arrow too, and then instant casting.
Yeah, I think mine's bound exactly to 1, 2, 3, because I play with the lettered keys most of the time, and so I think mine's bound exactly to when I jump in, it's 1, 2, 3, and then I think 4 is my leap in and 5 is my leap out.
Impact.
I think Black Mage is the coolest one I've seen so far.
Well, Red Mage is the only DPS with a good single target heal, and it's the other DPS that can battle raise. And because
I still think it's the coolest one so far.
White Mage, it uses a cane.
Isn't this
White
healing?
Mages draw on the Aether all around them from nature.
This is not healing.
To do really big bursty heals or regions. As for
this
its
is a
heals,
healer.
it's very straightforward. You got Cure 1 and Cure 2 for single target.
That's
You've
easy.
got Medica for AoE. Medica 2 for an AoE regen.
Wait for
and
it.
Cure 3 for a big AoE heal, but very close around you.
If I am in content and there is 1 or 2 white mages in my party, I feel like I am most likely not going to die unless you tell me those people have DPS meters up.
In
That makes
Shadowbringers,
sense.
they added some instant abilities that use up lilies from the lily gauge. And when you use up 3 lilies...
So
it-
every class basically has like this secondary resource that they have to manage. It's the same as like rage or like soul shards in WoW or like runic power. Okay, when do you unlock? What level do you unlock the secondary resource? You unlock it at 60, 30, 50. Okay, so it depends, right? All right, I guess I'll get it whenever.
unlocks a Flatus Misery, which is a huge AoE damage nuke. White Mage's
Damn.
oh shit ability is the wings. You sprout beautiful wings
I think
from your
that's
back,
cool.
and now everybody around you takes less damage, and all of your healing is super mode. Scholar. They use a book because
He didn't go over holy. They're AoE spam. I can't see. Larry's usually so good at the jokes. Like in all seriousness, if you are in an AoE pool and you were with white mages, they are not going to be healing you. They are going to go in and they're going to cast their AoE flashbang grenade over and over and over. And the rest of the time they're just glare spamming. It's just flashbangs on flashbangs. They're not healing. Like, you better not die.
they're so smart,
That's
and they
so
want
stupid.
everybody else to know how smart
That's
they are.
so
Scholar
dumb.
specializes in
They're
shielding
so
the party
dumb.
from all the damage in the first place. And
What
it
is
the
this?
pet healer that we have in this game. For single target heals, you got Physic, a small single heal. You also have Adlo,
Scholars don't heal either because they've got their little fairy here, and so they're like, fairy will be fine.
which is a heal plus a shield on a single target.
What
and
the
you have
fuck?
Sucker for an AoE heal plus a shield. And there are a few abilities
actually is
can
pretty good.
manipulate the shields. Emergency Tactics will change the shield into a heal. Recitation will guarantee that it crits so you can have a big shield. And Deployment Tactics will spread the shield to nearby party members.
So next expansion, we're moving in a new direction with healing. So this expansion, they tried to move us to where we had 3 healers and all of them were viable in all content. And so the objective, at least as I interpreted their statements, was to make sure that any combination of any 2 of the healers would be viable in content for progression. In the process, they actually kind of just equally made a lot of people not want to heal. And so what they're doing next expansion is we're getting a 4th healer. We're getting Sage added. And so they're moving us to 2 types of healers. Barrier, kind of that proactive healing, and direct, that reactive healing. And so I assume what the objective will be to balance it is to have proactive heals and reactive heals, so you'll have 1 of each. So you'll have 1 of the 2 shielders and 1 of the 2 directs. That does mean that anything that the healers have that kind of cross over those right now might get taken away, because they're going to have to pull things off of any job to make sure that Sage is relevant. We saw that when Dancer was added, that bards felt like some of their utility was taken away as dancers were given utility, right? You have to make sure that the whole role functions.
Oh,
Key
that's
strategy
really
is
cool.
Scholar's utility, it will raise the critical hit rate on the enemy for everybody.
That's
Scholar's
that's
other
actually that's
resource,
badass.
Flow, can be used on certain abilities, like an
Yeah, it's a
instant
disc
single
breeze,
target
basically.
heal, a party AoE heal,
Well, it has
and
a Swift Min
placeable
type
shield
ability.
that reduces damage taken and heals the party.
Oh,
Scholar's
wow.
super move is an
So that
upgraded-
shield was the limit breaker, right? Just because I'm assuming that's the limit
No.
breaker ability. No, it's not. Oh,
I
it's
don't-
something.
So I don't think he understands limit break. So limit break is something that doesn't have a parallel in WoW. So it would probably function more like a boss mechanic in WoW. But imagine there was a boss, because this is the easiest way to determine it, where as you did things through that boss, you filled a gauge based on how many people were in your raid, from 10 all the way up. Imagine if the more people you had in that raid, the bigger that bar could get, and now it would fill all the way up to its maximum size. So when we're an 8-man, you can have a 3-bar limit break. As soon as however many bars there are based on your party size, you want to burn it when it's at its most full. So if you have 3 bar available, you want to burn 3 bar. And basically what it is, it's a super ability. That gauge is shared by your entire party. And so you would probably have a raid lead calling out to use it. Healers have a instant mass res that's incredible. So it's used for prog. Basically, when things go crappy, it allows you to cheese a little further into that phase. Obviously, if you've died once, you're capable of dying again. It's not an instant clear, but it is a way of kind of recovering once more-ish. Tanks are an instant kind of invuln for the whole party, so it's usually only really used when people are undergeared or are missing things where they're trying to live through something that they probably shouldn't. So as we get past like initial learning prog and we get to where there's one mechanic that's wiping us, we know it's coming, we can pop the tank. But honestly, after that, once we get into where we're just farming content, you don't really use either of those. Healers are for recovering, and tanks are for protecting. We use DPS. Now, depending on the DPS, you have single target or range target. It's grouped by role, so your big casters drop big AoEs, and your melee do single target. So there is a little bit of optimization there, but because it's a shared gauge, there is this kind of meta where people are afraid to use it wrong. And so, like what has been said in the video earlier, when he was doing his Stasha clear, like, if it's at cap and you're not using it, you're missing out on generating more gauge because you can't generate it more than full. And so if it's full in a dungeon, just use it. You don't have to save it for the last 5% of the last boss. You don't have to. Just use it. DPS are afraid to use it because they're afraid to do it wrong. They're afraid to mess something up. And a lot of times that means that you finish the dungeon and like the gauge is still intact. Like you have a full gauge and the dungeon's over and it just never got used.
Else. Okay, so you have, it's a disparate spell. So you have limit breaker abilities, and then on top of that, you have raid cooldowns. Okay.
Yeah, so my limit break is bound to Shift V, which in WoW is where I bind when I have like a legendary that has an on use. So it is meant to be my like, oh crap, or let's go type button. It's my ultimate button. There are jobs and rotations and times that I never push Shift V. As a tank main, I very rarely am in content where I push Shift V. You know, if you don't have a legendary that has an on use button in WoW, I never use Shift V. Shift V, it's specifically set aside as that kind of ultimate button for me in games. And many people don't even have it on their bar. It's these two swords down here, so he has it to his mouse 5 button. It should be in kind of an obscure place that you can get to, but you're not gonna, it's not part of your rotation.
That does bigger shields
Watch
and
all class
healing
breaker.
than the
I saw
regular
it.
fairy and AoE shields. Or you could just eat your fairy and get a whole bunch of Aether Flow to spend. Astrologian. It uses a globe of stuff with cards on it. They heal by looking up at the stars and planets and sparkly things.
Wow,
They're also
look up
able
at the
to switch between a
stars.
shield mode
Isn't
or a
that
regen
cute?
mode, depending on which healer they're paired with. It has a normal single target heal and an aspected single target heal that either shields or regens. It's also got a party AoE or an
This is the hardest one while I'm leveling it to feel comfortable that it has not grabbed me as a job yet.
aspected party AoE that either shields or
Aspected
regens. And
or
then there's the whole card system, which it is able to draw upon and buff all the party members' damage. Once it gets enough different types of seals.
What is this, like Mr. Game & Watch? In Smash? Like, what do you mean the card system? It's a damage buff. Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, what? This bitch is playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the middle of the fight, man. Oh my god.
Just know that when you're playing the job, it actually feels even more like that than he's saying. Like, I feel like I'm doing my rotation, then when I start to run low on mana, people are like, that's because you're not drawing cards. Why would I be drawing cards?
It's an RNG heal. Yeah, that's crazy.
Can buff the entire party at the same time. An Astrologian's super heal move is called Neutral Sect, which will change all of your aspected spells to activate both the shield and the regen at the same time.
That's cool.
As well as buff all the heals in general. And that's it. That is all of the Shadowbringer's jobs. Now keep in mind...
I always know that I'm not drawing enough cards when I start to run low on mana as an Astro. I'm like, oh, and we've forgotten that. Because I don't have weak auras to tell me that I am doing it wrong.
They're cool.
You can play all of these jobs on the same character. That is the beauty of Final Fantasy XIV.
I think that's one of the good things about the
jobs
game.
Can do all of the content in the game, where some of them are a little bit better at certain special things. Like if you want to solo old content, you know, redmage or Paladin are probably a little bit better at that type of thing. So the best advice is just pick which one looks really cool to you, and you'll be more motivated to get good at it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This video will be good for a little while.
That's something that World Firsters hit on pretty regularly in both games. Like, playing the job that you enjoy, playing the job that you're passionate for is more important than following the meta. We regularly see people, you know, determine that a meta going into a World First race, this job's the best and this job's trash and all that. And then you regularly see Limit or something go, I don't know what everybody's talking about. We're gonna bring one of those. You regularly see people like TPS in 14 say like, That's the tank we're going to bring. Bring the one that somebody's willing to slam their face into it for 18 hours straight. 14's pretty good about keeping... There really aren't jobs that are just so far behind that mathematically they're just not worth doing. We don't really have that. Like, it's balanced much, much closer to a fault. I mean, there definitely are jobs that are doing more damage than others. But if you're going to slam your face into a boss and you're going to die 50 times before you get a clear, you should probably do it on a job that you don't just hate.
While until the next expansion comes out and completely changes it all over again. Okay, bye.
So I want to say, like, I think that's actually one of the cooler things about it is the fact that, like, you can play everything on one class. Blue Mage, was that not on there? Yeah, I didn't even know. I have no idea. But anyway, like...
So there is nothing like Blue Mage in WoW. Blue Mage is side content. So imagine for a second, World of Warcraft players, if they created a class that was kind of like the allied race system of old, where there's a weird way to unlock it. So you level it up, just like a normal job. It shares gear with your other casters. It can borrow gear from them. Sounds like a normal job, but it learns its abilities by going out in the world and killing them after they've cast the ability, so it doesn't necessarily have all of its abilities right away. And so kind of like the allied race system where it's like, hey, this is not meant for new players. This is meant to be an encouragement to go back to content of old and re-clear it, because we're going to give you some, you know, racial special set for leveling up that allied race. It's meant to be this other job, and as in trade for that, what they can do is they can give it abilities where it can basically one-shot bosses. It can do all sorts of weird stuff. And it gets its own, like, it's called the Masked Carnival. It gets its own, like, mage tower with all these special levels to it. And it just becomes this other thing. And it plays in content with other jobs, but it doesn't play in random content with other jobs. It plays in specific party content. So there are aspects of it that are limited, but in trade for that, there are aspects of it where it gets to take the battle system and ignore all the rules.
Yeah, I feel like like, you can play it all. Like, that's how WoW should be. Like, but you still level up. So, like, that's what I was saying yesterday, right? Is like this game effectively has a count-wide meta progression in the same way that I think WoW should. Except for this game just lets you play them all on the same character. That's the only difference. Because you're still using different weapons and shit like that. You're still farming it out.
And it's just as frustrating as WoW when, like, somebody plays 2 specs and maybe those 2 specs align with a different covenant, or they have to choose which legendary to unlock first, and it feels very frustrating. In 14, you share gear within your role, so all your tanks share gear, all your casters share gear, with the exception of their weapons, of course. And so as a result, you feel like, okay, but when I'm melding my gear, which is kind of like jewel crafting or enchanting, warriors don't necessarily have the same stat priority as dark knights. Black mages don't have the same stat priority as red mages, and you have to choose because that gear is going to be shared. And then your weekly lockout raid gear, you have to choose, okay, I play tank and healer, which class do I want to gear out first? It's just as frustrating. And so you do still, at top end levels, sometimes see world firsters move into stuff like splits, which in WoW is taken to a much more extreme degree. Typically, if there are splits being done in 14, they're only splitting it in half. They're doing a party of 4 with 4 alts and a party of 4 with 4 alts, as opposed to in WoW where splits turns into like a whole day-long thing.
You're still leveling up the different things. It's just you're doing them all on one character. That's all.
It's cool. It's cool to see him get into that. It's cool to see him more excited about the jobs. As he gets more context for the game, I think his reactions and even the ways he's memeing and he's joking will become more informed and more educated as he gets more into 14. I assume he's only going to play it for melee DPS. I assume he's not going to have time to go level these other jobs, but at least he'll be aware of what they do, kinda.